Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ItCast Real Talk on Sex. I'm your host, Nika Sherrill. The ItCast Real Talk on Sex is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. This episode is brought to you by the House of Sherelle and TriggerHappyToy.com. As you can see, I am wearing lovely pink hair today because we are celebrating the Pink Takeover weekend. This is happening all across social media in support of Black women and Black women-owned businesses. Go follow, share, tag, support, really be a part of joining this community. And for everyone out there watching right now, you can head over to the Trigger Happy Toy website with the QR code in the corner. We have a deal for the Pink Takeover weekend, so go and get your 15% off in our store today. Got some lovely products. And we have some other events coming up. So this is National Pride Month, and you'll get 15% off in our store. Follow us on social media. I know I'm doubling back. Pride Weekend is June 23rd through the 25th here in San Francisco. You will be able to find us at the Pride Parade on Saturday the 25th, the Dyke March on the 24th, and then on June 23rd, we will be celebrating the Trans March as well. So also keep an eye out for all the festivities near you and make sure that you are celebrating, allying, and really supporting this just people, dang it. On July 16th, I have my next Releasing Sexual Shame workshop that will be with Ethology Collective, and that's going to be online and in person on July 16th from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific. As always, you can check out our weekly events. We have our Freedom Support Group on Sundays, 12 Pacific, all online, and that is hosted by Ethology Collective and the House of Sherelle. You can also check out our Sunday brunch at Jolene's, San Francisco. It is an amazing breakfast buffet. Go check it out. They support us, we support them. And again, just keeping it all positive in our community. Get one-on-one coaching with me by signing up on the Linktree to book a free connection session and ask us anything. We want to hear from you. We love seeing you out there. Send us your questions, post them in the chat so that we can be with them on the show. All right. Check out our Patreon to get extra bonus content, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and share with your community. We're going to go ahead and dive in. So, today's episode is Real Talk on Going Black. And I'm sorry, y'all, but we are talking about Black-owned businesses, just in case your mind went there. I know it did. So, in honor of Black-owned businesses, we're going to be talking about a lot of the history behind them and why they're so important. Joining me in the studio today is our producer, Betty, to be a part of this conversation and make magic. Betty, go ahead and join us in the studio.
Hey.
Hey.
Nika.
I'm good. How you doing?
Thank you so much for inviting me to be on with you today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We always have the most insightful conversations, and I really love everything that you do to make the show possible. So thank you for all your work and support as an ally.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here to support you, for sure. I always learn so much from being in this space and just, being with you. Your friendship is really a contribution to my life. So just want to let you know that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, okay, we're going to talk about Black-owned businesses, and I know you had some wonderful questions and some things that you came across. The first thing that I want to talk about for everybody out there is one of the number one reasons why Black people go into business for themselves. So I think this is one of those easily misconceived conversations around Black people like not wanting to work or can't keep a job, all these different things. And one of the aspects is that Black people have been systematically disenfranchised from the workforce. So, like, actually being able to have jobs, build a career, it's something that is there, but also for a large number of people of color, historically, we've been left out. So, I think that's one of those really big points. Um, and so then that inspires the starting of the businesses. You asked earlier about the whole family idea
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
how, yeah, black woman owned businesses, how that impacts the family unit. So could you say a little bit more about that conversation? Because I think it's going to speak to our disenfranchisement aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a few years ago, I was reading a book about couples and the relationship that couples have around working and around earning. And the study that was part of this book examined several different couples, different types of couples, and some in which the wife stayed home, the husband worked, the wife went out and worked, the husband stayed home. Um, Also, different cultures as well. So there was a Latinx couple where the woman worked and the husband worked, and and it was a conversation about how they navigate their relationship. And there's a lot of cultural norms that are a big part of how work and relationships go together. So, for example, you know, I think of I think of the typical kind of white family,
Mm-hmm.
the way I grew up with a father who went off to work and a mother who stayed home. And at one point, when my mother decided it was time she wanted to do something else, she went off to work, and my father didn't like it very much, so
Mm-hmm.
she ended up quitting and having to kind of you know, stay at home, even though she had this other interest and she wasn't really given an opportunity to work. Culturally, that's how they were raised.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how in the Black American dynamic, how do working couples I'm curious how working couples work that out, culturally, how that might show up.
Yeah, that's really great. You know, you're talking about the concept of the nuclear family, that it's supposed to be a husband and a wife and 2.5 kids, white picket fence. Those are the ideal standards that
Mhm.
everybody is like trying to live into. That whole it like it's honestly it's a part of like white supremacy culture that you have
Right.
to live up to this model and this standard, and it impacts everybody. Like, I'm not saying that it impacts non-white people, it impacts everybody. That perfectionism. um I will say that that's something that, while it's been like the nuclear standard dynamic, it hasn't been culturally, in my upbringing as a Black person, one of the common things that I've seen. And there are amazing, beautiful families together. Like, my dad was always in my life, my mom was always in my life, but the removal of the Black man from the home is something that's also been systemic since slavery. So, really causing the women to be matriarchs and actually stand up and be the primary person in the family. There's this idea that Black men might not stay around and take care of their families, and it's like, no, Black men are actually being targeted and removed from those
Yeah.
spaces. And then when you look at like the welfare system and how that's designed only to support women and children, and if you have a husband, then you can't get that support. Exactly, exactly. and um and then, the same thing with men not being able to get support in these different arenas, just as single men. So we're looking at that conversation, number one, where you don't actually have solid footing, and then, and then the context of it actually falling to women to actually step up and have to take care and have to be in these situations. I think there's a lot of freedom in it. I haven't seen a lot of like gender headbutting when it comes to like women have to stay home, men have to go to work, vice
Mhm.
versa. I haven't seen it on those lines, but I have definitely seen it as in like there's a lot of strength. there's a lot of strength out there. It takes something to build a business and raise a family or whatever it is you're doing, regardless.
Yeah. One of the things that that you mentioned before, which I kind of also been thinking a lot about as we're taught, we as you know introduce this particular topic, is the fact that and this was something that I think it occurred to me. It became much more apparent to me after the pandemic. I think I understood it before the pandemic, but it became really apparent to me when the conversation around the kind of harm that Black women go through
Hmm.
in their workplace and how the pandemic, which had them pulled out of the workplace working from home,
Hmm.
gave Black women a particular sense of safety and a feeling of not having to constantly deal with the harms
Yeah.
that they were constantly dealing with. And I think that in many ways, women have started businesses. Black women have started businesses as a way to protect themselves. To say, hey, I am
Mhm.
so fed up with this shit. I can do this better.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it and do it better.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, there's this excellence that Black women have a real sense of excellence. I mean,
Mm.
that's something that's been something I've observed about Black women-owned businesses is this, tremendous sense of pride
Yeah.
and desire to really look. I mean, a Black woman has to do it bigger, better, always, just to keep up, right? And being your own business owner, gives you the world, the possibilities, right?
It does. Yeah. I mean, the whole American dream conversation. And I love that you said excellence. I've been looking at this conversation around resilience a lot, given that Juneteenth is like a week away, and we've got all these different things coming up around Black history, which is incredible. And resilience implies that it's going to be hard or impossible. And excellence is like, you're doing amazing. In fact, more amazing than other people probably even think you should be doing. And I never even framed it that way. So I'm really glad you said that. I'm really glad you said that. Looking at the economics of not being able to have a job and be treated fairly there, I think that's huge.
Mhm.
Also, economic segregation. So, looking at being in the workplace and being harassed or passed over, ignored, denied, these are all things that I've definitely seen. Yeah, it's a people of color thing. Black women absolutely go through it. I mean, we even had to deal with things as simple as our hair.
Well, I mean, that in many ways is, I mean, one of the great Black women entrepreneurs, CJ Walker.
Yeah,
I mean, this is what created her empire. This is what created it. It was answering a need that Black women had specifically,
yeah.
which is awesome. I know another company called EcoSlay, which is a Black woman-owned business that specializes in, hair care products specifically for Black women's hair, because my hair is rather curly and it's I'm going to call it my Jew hair. It's my Jew hair.
You can say it, not us. Done.
Yeah, it's my Jew hair. There's a lot of similarities between that kind of hair in the sense that it's thick and it's very curly. So a lot of those products work really well on my hair too.
Wow.
But EcoSlay is an amazing company. I think they're out of Atlanta, Georgia.
Nice, nice. We'll
It's
make sure to get that link out for people
I
because we
will.
definitely are supporting Black-owned businesses everywhere. Um,
EcoSlay. There we go.
and nodding to Madam C.J. Walker, so a lot of people think that she invented the perm, like the first hair straightening product that was actually Garrett A. Morgan who invented the stoplight. Talk about
Oh,
Black excellence and genius. Madam C.J. Walker actually created a product that helps regrow the hair. So it was a repair product, which I thought was really cool. And
after
speak
you've put all that shit in your hair
right,
and you're losing your hair.
exactly, exactly,
You know,
and
I think this is a really interesting. I really want to go more deeply into this because what I mean, one of the things that I realize is that for Black women, there have been the beauty products that you get in in Walgreens
Mhm.
and CVS are completely don't fit, right? I mean, we see those products in those stores, but Black women have not had that.
Mm-mm.
And so they've had to be entrepreneurs and create that, right?
Yeah.
What do you know more about that? I'd love to talk about that.
And this is great because I grew up in a hair salon. My mom's a business owner, entrepreneur, professional cosmetologist. And I grew up around the beauty industry and all those chemicals. And I grew up in the good hair, bad hair era. And anyone with tightly curled, locks in their hair would be considered nappy. And I love it now that we have this new languaging. Like we can talk about curls in terms of curl pattern. Like there's 4C, which is the tightest curl pattern, which is what I have. And then you've got 4-3-2-1, and sorry, C 3-2-1. And it's about acknowledging that. I used to get so upset when I walked into stores like Walgreens, Walmart, wherever, and I would see like hair care, and then I'd see ethnic hair care.
It needs a special section just for
Right,
oh,
right. And then getting back to the workforce. So this is old news if you're Black, and probably might it's probably still new for a lot of people. The Crown Act. Do
oh
you
god, yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. And it's crazy because the amount of prejudice and discrimination that Black women and Black people have faced around their hair, period, has shown up in these places again, like the workplace, where you can't actually like freely have your natural hair. When I was my very first job, actually, I worked at an amusement park, and there was a rule that Black women could have locks, but Black men could not. And I thought that was so very strange. And what it was an attack on the natural hair conversation. Is
Yeah.
like locks as on a woman that could like blend in as braids or something like that. But as a man, you can't wear your natural hair. You can't wear fro. You can't wear braids. You can't have locks, like all these things. And again, holding people out over little things. Like that's the weird part because a lot of these things are little with a big impact, massive impact.
When you say these things, you're speaking specifically to the microaggression of of that of
Yeah,
calling out the hair as being not
it's like it's petty. It's like, "Oh, okay, well, we're not gonna hire someone because of their hair." It's petty, but then when you look at it as a system, it's actually locking out a whole group of people.
right. Sure.
And it's like just that one small stone with so many ripples. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that's great because today is the hair day. If y'all are on social media anywhere, you should be seeing all the lovely people with their pink hair. Uh,
Gorgeous. Well, and also, what was I going to say? One of the, as entrepreneurs, I mean, there are certain areas that well, tell me if I'm wrong about this, and I'd love to speak a little bit more. Are there specific areas that Black women entrepreneurs have been particularly successful in, um, and or can you think of Black women entrepreneurs who have completely like broken out of the mold?
ooh. Oh, this is interesting. So I mean, absolutely. I think that one of the things I grew up with, again, going back to the hair care industry, there were so many people doing that, and the beauty industry is so it's like it's very popularized in
Sure.
these spaces. So I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of the like small craft businesses and some decorating businesses, but
And
also
I can definitely, say that women in the restaurant industry have really, come into themselves as well, been able to really have a voice and be able to, make a difference in building. I don't know of any real empires that have been built yet
in
by
the
women by
restaurant.
women restaurateurs. I mean, there's women who have kind of created themselves as a brand, really branded themselves.
Right, I'm sure we're gonna be proven wrong. Anybody out there in the chat, please tell us right now who is like the best Black woman chef out there, TV show, restaurant, wherever we can find them. I have seen on TV, on
Well,
Net.
certainly, Mashama Bailey is one of them, right? Mashama Bailey, who uh, opened a restaurant in Savannah called The Gray. She she's been featured on Chef's Table, this documentary. Just a remarkable Black woman chef. Tanya Holland from Brown Sugar Kitchen really kind of took her concept and created her brand from it.
Yeah,
Has been
I
successful
believe
with
it.
that. Yeah, there are, and then Carla Hall. Do you know who Carla Hall is?
I don't.
Oh, she's this remarkable kind of vibrant personality who I think came onto into celebrity as on Top Chef. He was a top
Okay.
competitor, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you're making me hungry.
Mhm.
We're definitely gonna have to get BSK and was it Gray in Savannah?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to get both of those in there and, any other any other restaurateurs that you can think of. Yeah. So, I wanna look a little bit at hustle culture.
Oh, yeah.
And, that was actually a new phrase for me when I was preparing for this show. I was like, "Oh," because there's such a when it comes to business, especially small business, this idea that you have to do everything yourself, and it's very like hand over fist, hand to mouth. So it's still like living paycheck to paycheck, and there's a lot of hustle. Have to get more, have to do more.
Mm.
And I realized that's all coming from a survival mentality. So, what does it look like in terms of business to go from having to survive into actually thriving? And
Oh, yeah.
that's a leap that it's not a lot of people don't get there. They talk about numbers of businesses failing. A lot of people don't actually get over that hump into the thrive aspect.
Well, I think I also really want to call out something very important is that being an entrepreneur is hard enough. Being a woman entrepreneur is hard enough. But being a Black woman entrepreneur, well, if you're successful at that, you must be like you're incredible, right? You've had to overcome so
Mhm.
many more obstacles along the way as a result of that intersectionality.
Yeah.
And then throw in, hey, I'm queer, right? That's a whole another world, right?
Right, the whole gamut. And you're right, because there's a lot of barriers to entry for small businesses. So we see these things like, like getting business loans or getting investors. I, in my company, have done several rounds of funding. I develop products and I do the cultural work that we have here. But when I started, there were so many challenges for getting information, getting access to certain to access to capital, access to certain um types of education, I think, is another one that I wanna put out there, and it
Mhm.
didn't help that I do work in a business that deals with sex. Honestly, they'll tell me that doesn't help all day long, fine. But I'm not the only person, like, I'm not an anomaly, and it also is this major shift to actually be an entrepreneur and not get into the slog of the rat race working a job. It take like, I could say it all day long. It takes something, but it's also been very necessary. I know even for me, I'm like, I don't want to get a job at McDonald's. I can't. And a lot of like where I came from, that's like your go to. Well, if you can't work anywhere else, work at McDonald's. And it's like, well, like, let's think outside of the box and like elevate that space a lot more. And I see people turning very frequently to like, let me start my own business. I do think that there's a lot of upward mobility inside of all the different industries, but there's still a lot of racism and cultural exclusion in corporations, in academia, in all these places. And because little things happen on the surface, we think that these problems have resolved themselves, but they haven't. And you can really just see when it comes to representation.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's really important in that piece too is that women in general, are in the workplace. If you want to move up or you want someone to invest in you, men tend to be, um, looked at by these institutions
Hmm.
um, as the potential that they have for their potential, you know? But
Yeah.
women have to constantly be looking at proving themselves. They have to have already done that in order to actually get there. You have to prove yourself, right? And I think that that's even more prevalent for Black women, right?
I love that you just said that. That right there, that is white male privilege.
Oh, yeah.
That's so true. Like, yes, I have seen people get funded, I've seen people get backing and support just based on potential. And I have seen the same thing go awry for other people who have all of the success record, all of the track record. And it's really fascinating because really what it takes is opportunity. I think for a lot of people, having the opportunity and having the chance to expand is huge. The other thing I want to talk to, because it's not just the enfranchisement isn't just about where people are allowed to be or the systems or anything. It's also about the self value and the self worth. Like,
Mm,
the being an entrepreneur and not actually pricing yourself the way that you could price yourself, not actually believing in the value of your work. That's what promotes hustle culture. It's like, oh, well, if I can only afford so much, then the person I'm talking to can only afford so much. And so let me like do the most amount of work for the least amount of money. And that's a psychology that's like so ingrained. It's so ingrained and not like we're not just talking about Black women or Black people at that point. We're actually looking at a class conversation where if you are in these certain class brackets, that's the mentality of thinking that's pushed and like pushed on. So I think it's
yeah.
fascinating because that lack of value pushes the hustle culture.
Oh, so absolutely. Like when you were talking about that hustle culture, it made me, it reminded me of something that I learned about that I didn't know about. Um, when I was reading Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns. And in this book, which talks about the Great Migration, within the stories of three separate people, one of the stories she talks about how in order to make rent, these families would have a plate. You'd buy a plate. You'd go to their house and pay them $5 for a plate
Hmm.
of food.
Hmm.
And if that isn't hustle culture, I don't know what is, right? That's hustle culture. I need the rent. I'm going to get that rent no matter what. I'm going to figure out how the hell I'm going to get it. I'm going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And I know I can cook, and I've got the chitlins from, I know I've got the foods that my folks, that came with me from the South. This is what they want to eat. I know how to cook it. I'm going to make,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Especially those like specialty things, because they're,
Right.
yeah, regionally, culturally, like I don't personally eat chitlins, but a lot of people do.
I didn't mean to make it sound like it was some like
No, 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 no. I know you didn't. You were talking specifically about that.
specifically about that particular right, because
Exactly.
the woman who got herself up to Chicago, that's what she cooked. She cooked the food from where she came from.
From home. Yeah,
From
and
home.
that's the thing is, like, people enjoy it, they love it, it's not even so much that it's unique, it can be nostalgic,
Right.
and that is definitely hustle culture. It's beautiful, it's communal, I've seen it happen in a number of, like, act cultures and communities, whether it's, like, breakfast burritos or tamales. So I was having my own personal flashback. Um but it's that getting out there and going the extra mile and doing the extra thing so that you can make a dollar. And because of the hand over mouth, paycheck to paycheck context, it ends up leaving that like lack of funds, lack of security at the end of the month. So that can be really difficult. I think it's really creative. It's very creative. And it's beautiful that people can actually like do that kind of thing. When I look
And it is a mindset,
exactly.
right?
That
It
yes.
is a mindset which may or may not serve you in this world, right?
Yeah. And and there's an access level to it too, because if you say you don't have a green card and you can't get a job, those kinds of things. What's like, how can you make money and take care of your family? And so these very simple, rudimentary skills that we take for granted are the things that like put food on people's table that actually help them live and survive. I do think that as a whole, getting away from hustle culture is so important. And I think maybe it actually is just an American culture thing. I go to other countries or I hear about other countries and the way that they live, like naps in the middle of the day and extra meals and like, like there's
5 weeks of vacation every year, right?
exactly.
Mhm.
There's an ease and a peace to life that we don't get to have here, chasing the American dream in the rat race, trying to fulfill, being yay so successful, without actually being able to stop and enjoy that success. Like really taking that deep breath and enjoying it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's really something. And one of the things that I'm curious about is how we will have an opportunity. Now, I mean, before the show went on, I was talking with you about some of the richest women in America, right? The top Forbes self-made women. I put that in quotes because there are women on that list that are not self-made, right?
oops. Uh-oh.
Not self-made at all. They're on that list because their husbands were rich and died and gave them all their money, right? That's why they're on that list. But
Oh,
but two in particular, Rihanna and Oprah,
yes.
are women who created their wealth in very specific industries, right? And Rihanna became very famous in music, but her real wealth comes from her other ventures, right? She's been able to break out and do that. Oprah is a media mogul,
Yeah.
right? Major media mogul. um, what are some of these other areas that we could see Black women becoming, I mean, to see a Black woman at the head of a major venture capital
Right.
company.
And that's just it. It's like if we stop doing it in this imaginary sense. It's like Black women can be at the helm of anything, anywhere, like that amount of skill, that amount of knowledge, everything. And speaking to Oprah and Rihanna, like I love that you brought them up because I actually wanted to talk a little bit about Black Hollywood and crossover and how when we talk about economic segregation, there are lines. And these are women who have crossed over those lines into a huge space of success in
Mhm.
the media. Ah, sorry. In the media, like the whole conversation around Black Hollywood and even the Chitlin Circuit, which was another one where like Black performers could only perform at certain clubs and venues and would only get paid yay so much. But if you let Black people perform on a certain night, like, that brings in more money. So what you have here though with Rihanna crossing over into makeup and
Mhm.
underwear and cosmetics. These are things that you see other celebrities doing that
Right.
are like additional income revenue streams that don't necessarily get talked about cross culturally. I think about, was it J Lo had perfume and Britney Spears had perfume and like all these different things, and it was just so common and normal, but it actually didn't happen for every culture. Like I didn't see a lot of Black celebrities with their own perfume or their own makeup. Like it wasn't common. And those are, little things where it's like, oh, what's missing? Who's missing from this conversation? Oprah, with the work that she did in media and the life that she had growing up, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal what she's been through and what she's created. And just over the decades, that's someone to watch. I know in 150 years, when they look back, it'll be Madam CJ Walker and Oprah.
Right.
Like, and
Right.
yeah, and also getting away from the fact that like these are novel concepts, novel people, actually having more wealth and success to the point where it's not an anomaly, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really believe strongly that, you know, there are that for, Oprah, there every Black woman who I know who owns their own business has had to develop such a sense, like I said, of excellence, of really like performing above and beyond, right? And I think that that's really ingrained in the culture and the upbringing, in a white supremacy environment, patriarchal, that kind of thing. I think it's yeah, I think it's a big part of why Black women have to work so darn hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on this topic, I actually really wanted to talk about inheritances and like
Hmm.
the truth behind that.
Oh, yeah, you mean like that the other billionaire ladies on that, right?
There you go. And their kids and their kids' kids. Look,
Legacy.
legacy. So looking at inheritances, so you've got a lot of people, like we don't all start on the same playing field in any regard. We've all got different access to opportunities, knowledge, information, and so when you look at the starting line, when you look at where people are beginning, not only are Black people coming from a history of disenfranchisement, but there is also not a lot of communal wealth. So when you look at people who get inheritances, it's like, oh, well, your family's got money. Well, where did that come from? And off the backs of whom? So when you're looking at having an inheritance and how wonderful that is, actually knowing, like, well, did my parents work hard for this money? Is this old money that came from slaves? Is this old money that came from sweatshops? Is it, and like really checking privilege there a lot? Because I think people who've always had money don't understand what people go through who are in that survival scarcity mentality and mode. It's not something It's like it's something you don't notice until it's pointed out. So I think that's a really big one. And if you're out there sitting on inheritance, you're an heir of some sort, don't reject the fact that you have the money. Don't all the different things, but actually do something good with it. Like do something good that makes a difference because I hate to say it, but you didn't earn that money. Not just the heirs, but the people who worked, who took it off the backs of other people.
Yeah. Generational wealth is missing in certain in the Black community, that kind of generational wealth. It's intentional.
Yeah.
It was intentionally done generations ago, continues to be done generally,
Yeah.
now. This barrier to generational wealth. Um, yeah, and so that makes, someone like Oprah, her rise to the top so much more spectacular, so
Yeah.
much more unique, and so much more unusual,
Yeah.
right?
And brilliant, to be able to create that and to have it impact. Talking about the history of it, I can't do a show on Black businesses without talking about Black Wall Street.
Oh,
And
please, yeah.
yes, so anyone out there listening, Black Wall Street, like that is a thing. And in the 1920s, it was actually destroyed. There was the Tulsa Race Massacre, and they went and they burned and just ransacked several city blocks inside of the Black community where there were Black businesses, there were Black homes, there were Black families, all this stuff. And it was targeted to disenfranchise and take away the access to wealth and capital from the Black community.
Which
So,
was building it so beautifully, right? This was a community that had really created a lot of personal wealth, generational wealth that was was thriving so
yeah,
incredibly, and
yeah.
bombs were dropped on the city. Bombs were dropped on the area.
You can't tell me with stuff like that going on that there's not a problem, that there's not an agenda to it. Because there's no reason. And honestly, like I'm like, I don't, and not that anyone, please, no one go do this, but I've never seen anyone drop bombs on Chinatown. There's Chinatowns all across the country. And I think that they're beautiful because in that culture, there's a huge culture of like spending the money, making sure that your neighbor is taken care of. You buy from businesses that represent who you are, the food, the place that you come from. And I think that it's interesting to see them thrive in certain areas and how they thrive, and then where they don't thrive. I think that something like what happened with Black Wall Street actually has created, it's kind of like that fear. It's like, oh, well, if you start to grow, we're going to smash you. So now, if you're going to grow, do it invisibly or do it in a way
Under
that's
the
not
table.
threatening. It's not
Yeah.
threatening.
Don't buy, yeah.
So,
Don't show everybody how successful you've become.
yes, which is another reason it's so important to support Black owned businesses because that is how we create that equity that we're looking for. All the DEI conversations we're having in our corporate lives or wherever we get our allyship news, it's wonderful, but we vote with our dollars. And a lot of people are looking at how can they be allies? How can they be woke? How can they do all these things? And it's like, well, go support a Black owned business. Go have a conversation with your neighbor. Like you don't have to be with picket on the picket line. You don't have to do anything dramatic, but be intentional with how you make change. You can't be an ally in this minute and not in the
Right.
next.
Right. I mean, what occurred for me as you were talking was, supporting a Black owned business makes it, somebody took out a loan. Somebody took out a loan to start that business,
Right.
right? And if you're a Black person, it's very possible you got a really bad interest rate.
That part.
I'm only saying that because some bank may have like decided you didn't own your property, you don't have this, you don't have that, you haven't shown us what you can do yet. So we're going to give you a really high interest rate.
Yep.
So now you've got this incredibly high interest rate on this loan that you're trying to pay, and you're trying to make your business thrive. So it's really crucial, you know,
Yeah.
because heaven knows there are enough obstacles in your way, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, oh, and it just landed also just to kind of speak about, there is this conversation around African Americans, like there's still the laziness part, but also like why haven't African Americans been more successful? And comparing that to immigrant cultures. So there's a whole disconnect culturally, not only of like how immigrants come in and how they're able to work, but different immigrants. You know, you had talk about people coming from Latin America and how they're treated differently than people coming from France, and the different opportunities and access. And it's not even just about skin tone, it's culturally, educationally, there's
I mean,
all
the shithole countries, the people coming from the shithole countries. And,
that part.
I didn't. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, the unsavories or however.
exactly. Like, yeah, their immigrants are treated differently.
Yeah,
The color of their skin, the language that they speak,
yeah,
the
yeah,
culture that they bring, it's all very different. All
yeah.
very different. Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful when there are cultures that are able to actually empower themselves financially. We have a thriving Eritrean community here in the Bay Area, and
Right.
it's amazing. And I look at that and I'm like, that that is something that culturally, communally was able to be carried forward, be brought over and carried forward. And I love that. So, bringing in these outside ideas and consciousness and dollars is really beautiful. And as African Americans, we don't necessarily get access to a lot of things. Like we get tamped down and squashed out. And I see people who, yeah, anyway, get elevated. I'm excited about the immigrant community that can come over here, start businesses, succeed, thrive, and do those things, because it's also like that's another arena where people have to start businesses because they get left out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
That's full thought.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. There was something that you said that made me think about when we're talking about. Oh, did you? If you, I was listening. I never read the 1619 Project, but I listened to the podcast. You're familiar with the 1619 Project? Yeah, this is by Hannah Nicole Jones. Anyway, Pulitzer Prize winning writer. The 1619 Project has been the subject of a lot of controversy because it's being used in schools, but it really teaches the story of how slavery and racism as actually at the base of American culture. It's the basis upon which we have constantly been working against. And one of the episodes is about this young sugar farmer in the South, a black man who had been farming sugarcane his entire life. Family farm, had this wonderful farm, and he learned from his family, and he was very successful. But what happened was the bank, that in terms of he needed to get loan they need to get loans every year in order to kind of start the planting process.
Hmm.
His loans specifically were being left behind. And the conversation was he wasn't a good farmer. That was what that he wasn't successful. And because he wasn't a good farmer, he was lazy. He didn't do the job right. When
Right.
the reality is he was not given those resources that he needed to actually succeed
Mhm.
at what he did really well. And he lost his farm. It got, foreclosed on.
And see, that's perspective, so much perspective. And I love that you brought this up right here at the culmination of the show, because I want to talk about reparations.
Good. Yeah.
Like, and it's an interesting topic that's been going on since forever, and
Yeah.
which is way too long and unnecessary. But it's all about perspective. One of the things I've heard people say about reparations is, oh, black people don't need reparations. They're just going to spend it on shoes and chicken, or like whatever other racist, stupid thing that gets said.
Even black people say that,
That part, exactly.
right? I
And
mean, yeah. Even black people say
right,
black people are going to do that.
that's the
I'm
point.
not. I'm not saying that in a way of like that justifies saying it. But to be honest with you, fuck it. They can use it on. They can use it on whatever the hell they want. If they want to use it on chicken and tennis shoes and fancy cars, fine.
Right.
It
And
doesn't.
that's
They don't deserve it. Everybody, yeah. Anyway, go
yeah,
on. Tell me more.
that's the culture. That's what's being fed and pumped into Black society. And then you got this very white supremacist concept that's being spout out by Black people that actually is continuing that disenfranchisement. It's like that statement alone is a tool of white supremacy, because then it's like, oh, well, why actually do the thing when it's not going to matter? And I'm like, no, it is going to matter. And there's a lot of ways in which it
Yeah.
can matter,
Yeah.
from education to better schools to actually like having good interest rates for Black owned businesses. This is a part of that enfranchisement conversation. So, yeah, I think reparations is majorly huge. And
Well, it goes back to that conversation we were having about generational wealth,
mhm,
right? I mean, imagine, a whole 6 million people being, left out, being thrown out without any resources into a world where they're promised 40 acres and a mule, which they
right,
never receive, but you're just being thrown out and you have to make life. You have to work. You have to
right.
get to work, right?
Ooh,
And the wealth of the entire country, the fact is that the United States became this powerful, wealthy nation on the backs of Black folks.
yeah, yep.
I mean, the largest single asset in the US economy in 1860 was human asset, was a human asset.
Can we just say the Black body? The most valuable asset commodity was the Black body,
Just really,
right? And then
yeah,
talking about devaluing and being taught to devalue oneself.
right.
Oof. Yeah, I perspective and so many things, so many
I
things.
mean, until we're able to pay people back, not to pay people back, but pay people for the work that they did. Not
Right,
just they did, their ancestors did. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for what their ancestors did.
right. You know what? Can we just get a fucking thank you?
Or acknowledgement that some sort of repair has to be done. I
Ooh,
mean, um, which one? It was it's I can't remember the number of HR. It's that House
oh,
resolution.
oh, oh,
I can
shoot.
only remember that I had my stickers, my buttons, right?
I know. I'm like, it's right over
I
there.
can't remember where I put the stickers, but anyway, yeah, somewhere over here. But, I mean, it took
Go ahead. Keep
20,
talking.
30 years, 20, 30 years for those for those bills to even reach the floor and be passed, to the point of like, let's actually set up. Oh, you got it?
I got it.
Yeah. H oh, HR 40. That's right.
There
And
we go.
HB 3121, which by the way, HB 3121 was the California initiative that created the California reparations for descendants of the descendants of chattel slavery in California, which recently came out with a recommendation to distribute cash to harmed individuals who were descendants of slavery. Not just that, but also people who were free,
Hmm.
black, black um, property owners who had their land taken away from them.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, it's really time that we have that conversation and understand that this country was built on that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really, really, really. Um, okay.
And think about those reparations, like a black woman with, 150, well, I don't know, maybe $250,000, maybe more than that, what she could do to kind of, you know, create new business that
Yeah,
would just be an amazing contribution to our economy,
absolutely.
right?
You know, it's really fascinating what you were saying about um slavery and like, just like go 40 acres and a mule, we're putting you out and survive. I think that's one of the things that people don't get, and being from the South and like having family that's in the South, it took me a really long time to actually rationalize the freedom, like the actual like freedom versus lack of freedom that happened there. And exactly what you pointed out, it's like you have these people who are in a system, they're being fed, they're being treated really poorly, but they're being housed, there's all these things, and then all of a sudden one day it's like you're free, go fend for yourself.
Right.
And that in itself, like, is fucked up. And it's been consistent, and not
It's
just go fend for yourself, but go fend for yourself with all these obstacles.
right. And then we're gonna put these some things in place, some structures in place, so that you actually still work for me, but I can't call you a slave. Right? I'm gonna find a way to put you in jail.
Mhm.
So you get all your rights taken away from you, and you have to build the roads.
Right. Because you did something wrong.
Yeah, which you stood on a street corner too long, looked at someone sideways,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or happened to be out after dark. All this, like, these are structures the United States government put in place. It just
Yeah.
it's fucking mind-blowing. Well, the other thing I want to bring up too is we are just
Yes.
a few days away from Juneteenth,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I really something occurred to me I wanted to share with you, Nika. I remember I was living in Montana just last year, and there was all these signs around about Juneteenth, and I thought to myself, there are no black folks here. Why are they celebrating? And then I thought to myself, Juneteenth is an American holiday.
Yeah.
It's an American holiday, and I should celebrate it too. It's a victory for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's known as Freedom Day.
Freedom Day.
Yeah. And like that is the day when all people in America were considered to be free.
You know what we should do? Nika, I have an idea.
What?
We should have a Passover Seder for Juneteenth.
Whoa.
Because Passover
Whoa.
is the story of the freeing of the Jews from Egypt.
Oh, that's so
We
interesting.
could create a whole new kind of Seder just for Juneteenth.
That's really cool. Okay. Anybody who hasn't been to a Passover Seder, do some research. It's really awesome. Lots of great parallels, especially the way that it's, being updated and inclusive of so many different kinds of people. I like that idea, Betty.
I'm going to do a Juneteenth Seder. I just have to put one thing in. The food has to be kosher. Okay, so we can't serve pork or ribs or.
Mind you, the food also has to be red, because that's a whole thing in Juneteenth about eating red food and the
Right,
coconut.
like the red velvet.
There you go. Do some research on that. And I think that's just a really cool idea and way to acknowledge and honor, because everyone should be celebrating these things and everyone should be acknowledging them.
Mhm. Yep.
All
Yep.
right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us. We are at the top of the hour.
Mhm.
So, first off, thank you, Betty, for having this conversation with me.
Oh, well,
Very,
thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad that, I was able to contribute to you today.
yes, absolutely. And to all of our listeners and viewers. So thank you, everybody out there, for joining us today. The ItCast is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we're creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. This episode is brought to you by the House of Sherelle and TriggerHappyToy.com. Go ahead and check out all the wonderful stuff we're doing over there. This weekend is Pink Takeover. This is Pink Takeover Friday. Between now and Monday the 12th, we will be having a 15% off deal on our website, triggerhappytoy.com, where you can go get a discount on our products. See, this is National Pride Month, and we are going to be at San Francisco Pride, June 23rd through the 25th. There is the Trans March on the 23rd, Pink Saturday and the Dyke March on the 24th, and then the official Pride Parade on Sunday the 25th. Please check us out there. And also, if you're not local, find and keep an eye out for festivities near you. On July 16th, I've got my next Releasing Sexual Shame, A Pathway to Freedom workshop with Ethology Collective. And that'll be on the 16th from 4 to 7 p.m., both online and in person. Check out our weekly support group, noon to 1 Pacific, all online. Ethology Collective and the House of Sherelle co-host. Go ahead and hit the QR code. We also have our Sunday brunch at Jolene's in San Francisco. Definitely support them. Bacon and burlesque. Who doesn't love it? And get one-on-one coaching with me. Reach out via the Linktree or the Calendly to let me know how I can serve you, and ask us anything. We want to hear from you. We want to know how things are going out there in the world and how we can serve and support. Go get access to our bonus content on Patreon, learn more about our work at theitcast.com, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and share with your community. Thank you, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, take it easy. Thank you. Bye.